Good evening, everybody. It's interesting. I think it was today was the Oscars in Los Angeles, California, and it's interesting. Tonight we're going to be dealing with the character trait of covered, of seeking honor, of having your name up in lights. So I thought it was kind of appropriate. The Hashgacha, the divine providence, had it that we should reach that point in Mesilas Yesharim where we're talking about the character trait of covered, of honor, of seeking status seeking. There's a lovely story. Maybe I'll start off with a story about Rav Chaim Shmulevitz of one of the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal of the Mir Yeshiva, and he became friendly. I don't know exactly how it was, with somebody who worked collecting the garbage, but you never actually seen him working. But just whatever, he knew he was a garbage collector. They became friends. So one day the Rosh Yeshiva, Rosh Chaim Shmulevitz, was coming out of the yeshiva, out of the Mir Yeshiva, and he saw this guy that he knew on the back, hanging onto the back of the garbage truck. So the guy in the garbage truck says, he leant down to the Rosh and said, "Look, the Rosh Yeshiva should know that I normally work in the cab." The idea is that covered is so ridiculous. You know, to him that was like, we're all. The point is that covered is an illusion. It's an illusion. It gives you absolutely nothing tangible. We talked about last week about envy and how stupid envy was, but envy is about something tangible. Covered is something which is so ephemeral. A person doesn't really give you anything quantifiable if you have it, and if it's taken away from you, you know, what did you lose? And yet you see one of these going to be talking about this is one of the strongest desires. One of the desires, the only desire actually that goes on all through a person's life, however old they become, and however much their senses become dulled and uninterested in a steak dinner, or the sushi, or the smorgasbord. I titled actually the word smorgasbord. It's really, what does it smorgasbord mean? It means why are you taking what you've got? You can take more. Smorgasbord, take more. But a person gets to a point in his life where those taivas, the physical desires of the body, become attenuated. He doesn't want those things so much anymore. Covered, however, is something which never, ever decreases. In fact, in some ways, maybe it even increases as a person gets older and he believes that he is, by virtue of the fact that he has a nice grey beard, that people should get up for him and give him covered. The Chavetz Chaim said that he gives a moshel. You know, if you go into the kitchen on Friday afternoon and you want to take some of the kugel, so your wife's going to kick you out and say, no, out you go. Kugel's delicious, but it's for Shabbos. Covered is delicious, but it's for Yom Shekula Shabbos. It's for Olam Haba. And as we're going to see, the only real covered that really exists is Torah. Ein covered ela Torah. Okay, with that brief introduction, we'll get straight in. We're holding, I don't know where it is in your books. In this book here, it's 166. I don't know if the paragraphs start with Tireki Achos Hakina Hi Chemda V'Tava, and you'll see that the sister of jealousy, which is the last meter we spoke about last week, jealousy with the sister, so to speak, of kina, of jealousy, is chemda, which is desire, and taiva, which is another kind of physical desire. He translates it here as desire and lust. Okay. Hello, he ha magas leif ha'odam ad yomoso. These two things tire a person's, wear a person's heart down, tire out his heart until the day he dies, unless he can find a way to rid himself of this midah. Kamam Ramzal, as Chazal teaches, says in Keheles, Ein adam meis v'chatzi tavosa biyodoi. Nobody dies with half of his desires in his hands. Meaning the idea of taiva is that a person wants, as we said before, smorgasbord, more and more and more. The more a person invests into these things, the more he finds that he gets to the end of his life and he's not aware of what he amassed. He's aware of what is still lacking. That's the nature of taiva, of chemda, of desire for physicality, physical things, food and whatever. A person doesn't die with half of his desires realized, half of his desires in his hand. It's interesting, it says taiva, lust, of course, apart from the obvious meaning, the simple meaning of the word lust, but the lust he's talking about here is a lust which divides into two separate categories, which are hamomon, the lust for money, and the second one is the lust, as we spoke at the beginning, for kavod, for honor. Shnehem ke'echad roim ma'oid v'gormim la'odam ra'ois rabois. Both of them are extremely bad, and they both cause a lot of problems to a person. The desire for money is not necessarily the desire for any specific thing. It's the idea of having the money, of desire. You see people who are extremely wealthy, and they can, how many steak dinners can you eat? You can only sleep in one bed at a time. You can only ride one sports car at a time. You can only cruise in one yacht at a time, and yet that doesn't stop them. Because logically, I was going to say this, even not al pi Torah, but even logically, a person should understand, what am I gaining from this? And it's tiring me out, wearing me out. Anyway, the desire for money is something which binds a person in chains, imprisons him in this world, and sort of, enslaves him to great toil, and the preoccupation of getting all this money. It tires him out, tires his limbs out. It says in Keheles, lo yispa kesef. The one who loves money will not be satisfied by money, as we spoke about in previous weeks, because the desire for, spoke in the context of jealousy. The desire, Rav Dessler, coming back from what we spoke last week, the two main motivating characteristics of the person are the desire to take and the desire to give. And the desire to take, which of course money is a primary example. It's really not, as we said, it's because you can only eat one steak dinner at a time, but the desire is to bring that which I don't have within my perimeter. And that's why it's insatiable. That's why oev kesef lo yispa kesef. If you love money, you're never going to be satisfied by money, because really what's behind this is, it's not the money, it's the desire to amass the money. And of course, when it comes to amass can always be bigger. There's no, so it's without end. Hamasira oisa mina avoida. This is so bad. Why? Because basically when a person is so involved in this, he forgets his avoda. His davening goes downhill. He's in the middle of davening and he's thinking about, there's an old joke, I think I told it to you before, that there was this non-Jew and he had a Jewish business partner. And he said, why is it the Jews are so successful in business? And he said, because we have something called the Shemona Esrei. He says, what's the Shemona Esrei? Shemona Esrei says it's a silent prayer where we pray to God. He said, so the Jews, the recipients of, tremendous siyat, well, he didn't say Shemona, it was non-Jew, he said of help from heaven. He said, well, not exactly, it's just we get plenty of time to think about our business affairs when we're davening. I mean, okay, it's a joke. But anybody who hasn't wandered off in the middle of Shemona Esrei to somewhere where his mind shouldn't be has never davened. We all have to bring our focus back. And, that's part of davening. A person finds himself wandering, and our minds do wander. It could be there's a very positive side to that as well, because most creativity comes from the mind wandering somewhere else. My daughter's a psychologist. She was telling me that most creative people have the ability to put two unconnected things together in a way that's not immediately obvious. So, daydreaming can be a very good thing, but not when you're davening. But again, this is something that a person has to, you bring your focus back. Okay, it's a joke, but the point of the matter is, how do we get into this? I forgot. Right, because if a person is focused on his money, he's going to find it very difficult to daven, even get through from one end of the Shemona Esrei to the other, without becoming hopelessly entangled in the FTSE or whatever it's called, or the NASDAQ, or Yeah. Yine kama tefillos ne'avdois. How many tefillos, how many prayers are lost? V'kama mitzvos nishkochos. How many mitzvahs are forgotten? Oh, well, it's skir already. Or, the person has to go and has to do a chesed, or he has to, all kinds of things, or kriyashma. A person who's involved in this insatiable desire for the amassing of wealth will find that his observance of mitzvahs is pretty shoddy. It's inevitable that it's going to slip. That's what he's saying. Why? Mipi roiv ha'esek v'yagias hamonon ha'sechoira. Hamon Schora, sorry, because of his over-involvement in and his back-breaking preoccupation and labor in the pursuit of wealth. Kol shekain, all the more so, Talmud Torah. All the more so, he's going to lose out on Talmud Torah. Because even though, as they say, it's possible to phone it in when you're davening. It's possible to just go through the motions when you're davening. But learning Torah is not like that. We all know that learning Torah requires a tremendous amount of focus. It's very difficult, I would say almost impossible, to learn Gemara, Torah Sheba'al Peh, if your mind isn't well rested. I've seen this many times with my Talmidim, that they don't get enough sleep. A person's success in his learning starts at 10 o'clock the previous night. If a person finds himself, and this is a big problem in yeshivas, of pitput, chatting. People chat and they chatter until 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And so, the next morning, right, they go to shir, and of course, they don't understand what's going on. So, Rabbi Sinclair doesn't know what he's talking about. So, because they didn't understand what I was saying. So they say, okay, all right, we'll put you in another shir. So, Rabbi, whoever it is, Rabbi Plony also doesn't know what he's talking about. So this guy who comes, and I've seen this happen, people would come with a desire to learn, and because they just simply don't get enough sleep. So they don't understand what's going on, and they decide after not too long a time that really either all the rabbis have got no idea what they're talking about, or it's just not for them. They don't have the capacity. That's not true. They don't have the capacity because they didn't have the sleep. It's so important. I remember asking my Rebbe for an Eitzah before Elul, right? Elul, they used to say in Europe before the war, in Poland, whatever, in the Shtetlach, that when they were machriz on Shabbos Mevorach in Elul, Rosh Chodesh Elul Yeh B'Yom Shlishi, you could hear these dull thuds of ladies fainting in the ladies' gallery. That was the pachad. So we don't have that anymore. It's very difficult for us to muster up any kind of fear about anything. It's just, it's not PC, right? To scare. But anyway, that's another subject. Anyway, what I'm trying to get to is that I wanted an Eitzah for El. How can a person? I thought, my Rebbe would say that, you have to learn, say the whole of Tehillim 5 times, whatever. He said one thing to me. He said, make sure you get enough sleep. The first thing to go out the window when a person is tired is his Yerushalayim, is his ability to learn Torah, because Torah requires, especially learning Torah Sheba'al Peh, something which we call in Yiddish holding kop, focus. Now, this is a whole big topic. I'm already off the topic, but this is nowadays a major problem anyway, because everything about the media and smartphones and everything is about defocusing. Now this. We're a generation who's been taught not to be able to focus more than 2 seconds. Yeah, you can conduct an experiment for yourself. Just take an idea and see if you can hold that idea in your mind for 30 seconds. You won't be. It doesn't sound like a very long time. You try. Try and think about one thing without losing that idea for 30 seconds. Anyway, all right, so that's my diatribe. Let's bring it back to what we're saying. Over-involvement in the desire for money leaves a person to relate, to negate, to ignore, to let go his Torah study. And there's a beautiful drosha. It says in the Parsha in Devarim, talking about the Torah. It says, Loi me'eva layomhi. The Torah is not on the other side of the sea. The Poshet Pshas is it's accessible. You don't have to go up to the heavens to get the Torah. And Tucker, if you had to go up to the heavens, you'd be mechuyev to. But no, Hashem made the Torah very accessible for us. You don't have to get on a boat. It's not on the other side of the sea. Chazal darshan this, as it says, Ba'osam, we're talking about it's not on the other side of the sea. It's on the other side of the sea for those people who cross the seas and are busy with in China and Taiwan and Africa doing business. Now, again, I'm not saying a person doesn't have to make money, make a parnasa. I'm saying a person who is involved in money for the sake of money, not to put chicken on the table for Shabbos, not to put his kids through college, somebody who's become obsessed with money. That's what it means. It's not on the other side of the sea. Those people who go on the other side of the sea will find it very difficult to become well learned in Torah. V'chein shani says also in others, lo kol hamarbe l'schoira machkim. Not all of those who are involved in in business become wise. Now, not all of those. There are people. I mean, there are places where you see rich, wealthy, from businessmen. They have shirim in their offices. In New York, it's amazing. I went to somebody and go up to right at the top of the skyscraper to daven Shacharis, and there are people learning and learning, seriously learning. There's a kollel there. But again, that's something which needs a lot of presence of mind to be able to do that, to keep your focus in the midst of all the business emergencies that come up and all the things, the tirdas, the problems and the nagging things that the businessman, and of course the more power he has, as we're going to see, he's going to say, Marbe nachosim marbe daga. The more a person has property and the more he has demands on his focus and attention, the more property he has, the more he has to worry. The more worries he has, the more things are vying for his attention. Okay. He hamasoris oisol le sakonos rabos u mateshes es koichoi barov hadaga afilu achre hasigu harbe. So it exposes, so the person who's involved in this exposed to many dangers, as we said before, because he's in the business world and he's pursuing all this, and it takes his koyach out of him because of the as we said, the rov daga. He's got a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders, and even after he's made a lot of money, a person who's involved in this will not let go. V'chein shaninu, it also says in Pirkei Avos, as I said just now, the more a person has, the more responsibilities, the more worries he has, the more preoccupation that he has, the more he has to be concerned. Ha'amar veres pa'amim rabos al mitzvos ha'torah. This often leads to a situation where a person is over, he transgresses a mitzvah in the Torah just because of his over-involvement. Va'afilu al chukos haseichel hativiim. As I mentioned at the beginning of the shir, this also leads to a person going against the laws of natural reason. We're not talking about Torah, we're just talking about a person puts himself into situations which, if he stopped for 2 seconds and thought what he was doing, the amount of effort he's putting in is reasonable, he'd say, no, this is crazy, I have no life now, I'm forgetting the names of my children. Yesera Olea Chemdas HaKavod. Okay, that's now we talked about the love of money. Worse than this is kavod. Ki kava haya efsha shichboish ha'adam es yitzre alamom. The person could have already dominated his desire for money, got that under control, understood the evil of relentless pursuit of wealth for its own sake. V'al shah hanois, and also he's got control his other desires for physical pleasure. Achakavad hu hadoichek, but still he'll be motivated and pushed and driven by the lust for honor. Ki efshar lo lisboil lerois es atzmo pochus mechavero. Because it's impossible for a person, it bothers him that other people should be more than him. it just bothers a person. A person finds it very difficult that other people should be more than him. It's part of human nature. And that comes from Gaiva. Who do you think you are? But it's also, we'll see. Many people have fallen down in this, the ne'avdu, and have become lost. Hine, Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat, lo nitrad me'olam, he was only pushed out of the world, he lost his olam haba, ella ba'avor covered. Yeravam ben Nevat was lost his olam haba, he was an enormous Talmud Chacham, he knew everything, and he was way up there at the top, in the generation of David HaMelech, but he still lost it all because of a desire for kavod. Now, of course, the kavod that he wanted wasn't the simple kavod that we're thinking of. Obviously, he was a very elevated person, but even on his level, there was something that was not quite right in his makeup, which led him to the following mistake. Hu Masha Omer Sal, it's the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. Tafasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu, amazing story. This really reminded me of Hollywood. Tafasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu bevigdo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu grabbed Yeravam ben Nevat by his garment. Amaloi, and Hashem said to him, Chazor b'cha, do tshuva. Va'ani, says Hashem, and I, va'ata, and you, uben Yishai, and the son of David, the son of Yishai, David HaMelech, Netayel began Eden. We'll go for a tiyul, we'll go for a shpatzia, we'll go for a walk together in Gan Eden. Amalo, Yeravam ben Nevat answered the Kodesh Baruch Hu, Mi barosh, who's going to be first? Who's going to get top billing? Mamish, this is Hollywood. Whose name's going to be bigger, right? Like a Burt Scruggs production produced by Burt Scruggs in Scruggs Studio. You look at those titles; they go on and on and on. Covered. I want to be first. He's talking to Hashem. Who's going to be first? Who's getting top billing? And because of that, Amaloi, Kodesh Baruch Hu said to him, Ben Yishai Barosh, David HaMelech is going to be number one. David HaMelech is more than you. Amaloi, Ihachi, Lo Ba'ena. If so, I don't want. Unbelievable. The desire for kavod can be so, and with such a great person. Unfortunately, this, as I said before, kavod is something which affects a person, and in a sense, the more elevated this person becomes, the more, the more fine that little bit of the desire for kavod can be such a pagam, like a small stain of ink in a beautiful white garment, is much more bolet, much more pronounced, sticks out more. Somebody who's on the level who's very coarse, let's say like a coarse garment, you don't see the stain so much. A little bit of kavod on somebody who's an enormous Talmud Chacham can ruin him completely. Mi garam, look, another example. Okay, so that's Yerov. Mi garam le Korach. What caused Korach? Sheyovad, that he lost his olam haba, right? He went down into the pit with all of his friends and associates. V'chol adasa, all his congregation with him. Elam mipnei kavod. Kavod, why? Umikra molehu, because he wanted to be, it says in Bamidbar, uvikashtem gam kahuna, right? He said to who would you seek for the priesthood? He wanted to be Korach wanted to be basically, he wanted to be Moshe Rabbeinu. V'chomim zal say, Hagidu lonu ki kol ze nimshach mipnei shera Elitzofen ben Uziel nosi v'yoroitz Elios hu nosi bimkoimon. The whole motivation for Korach and with all his wisdom, enormous Talmud Chacham, all of this was motivated by this desire that he saw Elitzofen ben Uziel, who's going to be the prince, in his place, and that burned him up. He couldn't take that. As it says in this is a Zoya, says that what caused the sin of the spies, the Meraglim, who came back and spoke ill about Eretz Israel, covered. Why? Shiotzi dibal al Eretz v'gormu miso lehem, and as a result of that, they caused their own deaths and the deaths of an entire generation. Mirosam pen yimat kavoidom b'knisas ha'aretz. They were worried that when they got into Eretz Israel, that things were going to change. Out there in the desert, Kodesh Baruch Hu the Jewish people were leading a supernatural life, being fed on the mon, and they realized that times were changing. They were going to go into Eretz Israel, and this supernatural kind of life was going to come to an end. And they thought, well, if maybe then when we get into Eretz Israel, we're not going to be the top dogs anymore. We're not going to, sorry, I don't like to use that expression. We're not going to be the tops. We're not going to be in charge of everything. We're not going to be the the princes of the tribes. We are going to lose our jobs. And that caused them, even if it wasn't conscious, but on a subconscious level, they wanted to hold on to their covered to the extent that they were prepared to speak Lashon Hara about Eretz Israel and this caused their own deaths and the death of an entire generation. They were worried they'd lose their jobs. Other people would stand in their place. It's interesting, he says, it's not just that they lose their jobs, other people are going to be in my place. I don't want to see anybody else more than me. It's not just I'm going to lose my job, I don't want anybody else to be more than me. Amar Hischil Shaul. What was it that, again, talking about Shaul now. So what was it that Shaul sought the opportunity to kill David HaMelech? The only reason Evelyn Pnei had covered. Again, covered. Why? Because it says in Shmuel Aleph, Shenema v'ta'aneno hanoshim hamasachkos v'tomru. If you remember that the women, the joyful women, when they would praise, and they would say, they would play their instruments, and they said, Shaul has killed his thousands, and David has killed his tens of thousands. Oh, that was what started Shaul, to look at David and to begin the process of wanting to kill him because of kavod. He wasn't being given the kavod that he deserved. He couldn't bear it that David would get top billing. And again, one further example of this, we say, again, so he Shaul ayin David. From that moment, Shaul looked at David. From that day, v'holan omud, looking to kill him. Another example, mi garam lo le Yoav, sheomis es Amosa. Now Yoav was David HaMelech's chief of the army, an incredibly brave and brilliant general. But Amasa, who was actually one of his family members, was promoted on top of him. And as a result of that, he killed him. Why? Covered. Ela HaKovered. Shema lo David, that it says, he said to David, Im lo sa tzava tieh lefanai, kol hayomim v'chulei. If you will not always be my general. Okay, it's a quote from over there. I think we're going to have to leave here. We didn't finish off here, but we're going to see, we'll carry on next week. And I think we should be able to maybe, B'ezrat Hashem, finish the chapter. Very long chapter 11. Okay, all the best.